Hello and welcome to the Nauru Fastcast with your hosts, Dave and Josh Masson.
Pull up a chair and listen to us discussing fasting and health-related topics.
Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of the Nauru Fastcast. Today I'm going to talk to you about calories in and calories out and what we need to understand about how we burn energy. So I'm going to break that down into three separate sections today, and I'm going to start initially with, in general, what is calories? Okay, so calories is just a metric of physics. It's an energy rate. So it's important for us to sort of understand that the type of calorie that we're eating is also important. You know, I've said this many times, but a slice of toast and an egg have the same number of calories. So you cannot compare the two. They are just nutritionally, they are so far removed from each other. And our energy balance does generally require hormones as well as the calories. So we need to remember this. So when we think about what makes up energy loss, so we've got basal metabolic rate. So basal metabolic rate is basically the amount of energy that it takes to keep the lights on. So we're talking about powering the lungs, powering the heart, powering the digestive system. Everything that we don't have control over is really important, and that takes up about 75% of your daily calories. So on the average person having 2,000 calories a day, then you would be assuming that you'd be basically burning about 1,750 calories just keeping the lights on. Okay, so when we think about calories in, calories out, we also have to remember body fat, because the body is not stupid. It's not going to just as soon as we're going to stop eating, it's not going to start digesting itself, because obviously the body is there to survive. We want to maintain health. So the body will either do one of two things. It'll either burn more calories to a point, or where most of the energy is going is the basal metabolic rate, it just slows that down. And as a result of that, you start to feel tired, you start to feel energyless, irritable. And that's sometimes why when people hit these plateaus in their diet, it's because the body's just gone, well, hold on a minute. You want us to, we're burning 2,000, you're eating 1,800. So what we're going to do is we're going to dial down the resting metabolic rate down to 1,800 calories so we become equal, because the body just wants to be in equilibrium all the time. You kind of got to remember that. And this is when it comes down to the type of calorie that you can do and also how you access your own calories. Let's move on to thermogenic. Our food. So our food basically will account around about for 8 to 10% of the calorie loss. If you're eating more protein, then that can go from anywhere from 20 up to 35% of the calories you consume from protein will be used to basically process the protein through the digestive system. So as a kind of calorific loss, the amount of energy, the temperature energy it takes to sort of break these down, and it takes around about 22 nutrients and minerals to liberate the kind of nutrients from our food. So it's quite a kind of energy intensive thing to break down food, and obviously it happens for quite a long time. You know, you've got to break it down, you've got to chew it, your stomach has to break it down and pumps it, and then you've got to basically push it through the digestive tract, then turn it into a stool, then get it out of your body. So the body is doing so much in that time. It's quite energy intensive. And remember, just 25% of that 1,750 calories is just used to refill your electron potential. So basically, you know, in chemistry, when you move and make an action potential, you have, you know, sodium, potassium moving in and out of the cell, which makes an electrical charge, and that then causes the neurons to work. So every time I'm moving my arms, I'm thinking, all this type of stuff, the body has to then refuel that up again. And just filling that back up again is a third almost of those 1,750 calories that we are using on an everyday basis. So the body cannot afford to just keep dumping calories because it won't work. So you need to work with your body and understand how this works, I think, to get the most out of what you're trying to do. And then the other one is you kind of got exercise thermogenesis. So obviously as you exercise, you'll be using energy as fuel. And then you've got NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that would be things like walking, standing, cleaning, gardening, those types of movements that are, you would almost say, are non-objective moving. So you're not doing it for the purpose of raising your heart rate or going out for a run or doing anything like that. It's just simply as a result of you doing an activity. So if we then move on to the next thing, we've said this before many times on the podcast, you've kind of got your, roughly most people, if you're lean and you're in good shape, you've kind of got 42,000 calories on you. So 1 gram of body fat is 7,700 calories. So we've got 40,000 calories in fat, and then we've got 2,000 calories stored as sugar, basically. So the body will want to use this when we're in a caloric deficit. Now, as we eat food, the body's going to grab that, and now depending on the type of food, we're either going to store it or use it. Okay, so the hormone that tells us to store things is insulin. Okay, now when you've got high circulating amounts of storage hormone, what do you think you're going to be doing? Storing energy. It is literally as simple as that. If you can think about, when I've got this boiled egg, or they've got this piece of toast, the boiled egg is going to have a tiny amount of insulin to deal with it because of the fat, well, more because of the protein in it. But when it comes to the toast, it's going to have a bigger peak in insulin because it's going to have to deal with all that carbohydrate. So the reason is why the calories do matter is because it's what happens to the hormones that are released. Now, the thing with intermittent fasting is that the intermittent fasting allows a period of time for your insulin to be reduced to a level where your body then allows to open up its own storage and start accessing that. So if you think about it, you're consuming, say, 2,000 calories a day, your body's using 2,000 calories a day, you're going to stay at the same weight. You're still carrying 42,000 calories on you. And what we're not allowing to do is we're not allowing a longer time for the insulin in our bodies to reduce. And again, if you've got insulin resistance, this makes it even harder. But then our body can go, right, well, we've got a signaling hormone that's telling us constantly to store. Now we don't have that. So therefore, we can then start to access our own calorie store to be used as energy, because otherwise there is no point in you having all this stored fat on you when you're not going to be using it. Now, the body in metabolic flexibility is able to jump between burning fat, carbohydrate. Now, your body, because carbohydrate isn't an essential nutrient, because the body can turn protein into carbohydrate if it needs it. Now, this is where metabolic flexibility comes in, because if you've fasted before or you have a keto diet, what you'll find is when you jump into ketosis, your hunger goes, because effectively you're feeding yourself from your own body. Now, again, this is why the fasting has that hormetic effect, because the body, things like autophagy, is where it uses sort of like senescent, broken, unused cells, because the body becomes very good at foraging around for food. So it goes, right, these cells aren't useful. All this excess skin from us losing weight, we don't need that. Let's just turn this into energy because we need to find energy. And that's where the pure kind of benefit comes from fasting when it comes to weight loss, that it won't happen on its own. So you need to have all of the other things. You need to be sleeping well. You need to be getting sunlight in the morning. You need to be making sure you've got adequate amount of sodium in your diet, because as you said before, a low salt diet is just as bad for you as a high sugar diet. So, and we said before, and this is sometimes where people don't understand the whole connection with salt, is that sodium is lost a lot during fasting. Now, what do we do when we're losing sodium out of the body then signals the kidney to retain it. And one of the signals one of the sort of adaptations that we've got is that we release insulin to allow the body to store salt. Okay, now what does higher amounts of insulin in the body do? It tells everyone to store things, so you prevent you from accessing that internal storage. So we cannot think about calories in, calories out without the impact of hormones. Now, these impact is, you can go into depth I could talk to hours about it, but in principle, you want to think about, if I've got higher amounts of circulating insulin, if I'm not having enough sodium in my diet, and if I'm not drinking enough water as well, because obviously that will allow the dilation, so you have more blood flow going to the liver, which helps to break down the insulin and remove it. You then have more blood flow that goes to the external muscles because you won't be so dehydrated, and that peripheral perfusion of blood will allow more of it to be soaked up by the muscles, the skeletal muscles, because that's the biggest storage of glucose house that we have. So if you're not increasing your storage capacity as well, so if you're not doing weight resistant exercise to increase the storage, then your body is going to have to keep pumping more and more insulin around to try and find the storage, and that probably ends up going back into fat cells if you're not using enough of your internal storage. So if we just go back, so you've got 3 different ways that you can sort of expend calories. 1 is the basal metabolic rate. 2 is from the food that we eat actually has a thermogenic effect. And then we've got increasing energy from heat, making heat from physical exercise and non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is where like the cold plunges and things like that happen, because this actually upregulates your basal metabolic rate by about 350%. So enhancing that basal metabolic rate is important, but it's also important to make sure we're eating the right calories so the body can switch off that insulin signaling, so it can allow the body to access its own storage. We also need enough time between our meals so the insulin level can go down. And that's why it's important at night time not to eat within 2 hours of going to bed, because the melatonin signals to the pancreas, where the insulin is produced, to stop releasing as much insulin. And then you've got this higher circulating amount of sugar in the body. And when you've got an energy source in the blood, excuse me, when you've got an energy source in the blood, the body's not going to then want to start switching over to fat stores because it's already got a higher amount of energy that it can use in the body, and that then causes its own problems anyway. So we can activate our own energy stores as long as we are focused on what the downstream effect of the food that we put in our mouth. And that needs to be really mindful. It's like when we refeed after fasting. Some people just plow in with food, and it's important to put a small amount of food into the body because we do really need carbohydrate in the body. It is an important because obviously if you have too low carbohydrate, it can affect your hormones. You're going to make it anyway, and it's quite an energy intensive thing to make carbohydrate from muscle. We don't want to be muscle storage is so important. So as we said before, doing some form of exercise during our fasting is a non-negotiable, because the body will then see that those muscles are there to be used and they're not fair game for food. So if we can make sure that when we eat after fasting, within the first 2 hour window, we try and have fats, protein, non-cruciferous foods, so like broccoli, we don't want to be eating any of that type of stuff. And if we can have sort of try to avoid lactose, that's a really good place to start just to break your fast with. So like a little bit of meat, some avocado, and maybe some kimchi is a good start to sort of break your fast. I've really played around with this, and it has made a tremendous difference for me anyway. Just being really cognizant of that first time you break. I have got into a habit of breaking with a protein shake, which is like a beef protein shake, and I do that, and I usually wait another 2 hours or an hour, and then I eat again. If you can't, just try and break your fast in the order which is most effective for low blood sugar levels. So if you do want carbohydrate, which is good to have in your diet, a small amount, I think you should go vegetables, protein, fat, and then a carbohydrate at the end. So you do eliminate that spike. And again, your body's going to be looking for, it's going to be very insulin sensitive, at the glucose sensitive after you break your fast. So it's important to manage your carbohydrate load straight away after. So those things are something just to be mindful of. Like what you're eating does have an impact on the ways our body will want to increase the energy, how we want to store the energy. And to access our energy, we need to remove the storage hormone as much as we can out of the body. The other thing as well is that ironically, exercise isn't really going to do much for weight loss. It's incredible for longevity, for energy production, for sucking up glucose. On every single level, exercise is critical to an everyday healthy lifestyle. But when it comes to losing weight, it should be part of your idea of getting healthier, but it shouldn't be the sole thing that you do to lose weight. Because ironically, you could lose 10x the amount of calories from going out and doing an hour in the gardening than you would going out and doing a half an hour run, because neat non-exercise activity thermogenesis actually burns more calories. So you're more to get that cardiovascular benefit, and like I say, health and longevity, super important. But when you're talking about solely for weight loss, it's not always the best idea. You're better off doing more weight training and sort of low intensity zone 2 training to burn fat than you are focusing just on going out and doing really hard cardio. So that's a real brief overview of covering a few different topics, but I feel like it's something I've been asked quite a bit lately. And again, I like to bring things from what I get asked as patients at work, and then what we get asked on our social media, and just doing a quick summary. We'll probably do like a blog on it as well, just to help to go into a bit of context so people can kind of go and look at it and read it over a period of time to try and digest it and understand what we're saying. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please go on there. We've got loads of good resources now. We've got our free ebook, which is a 28-day intermittent fasting guide, and it's so good. It's got all this stuff that we talk about built into that, and it's free. You can just go download it and you can try it, and it might help you just sort of get into fasting. And we've also got all of our blogs, all of our podcasts on there, and we really hope you enjoy it. If you do like it, please make sure you go to wherever you listen to your podcast and follow, like, and put a comment. That would be absolutely amazing. That's all we can ask from you. So thank you so much.